start by telling you a story. A few years ago, I was in my kitchen and my 23-year-old daughter, Shazia, comes into the kitchen and says to me, "Mum, I've decided I'm going vegan." And my heart just sank because I had spent years as a dietitian bringing her up on a balanced diet of, dairy and meat and the wide array of wonderful nutritious foods that we have. And I'd always wanted her to have a mixed diet. And at that time, my knowledge wasn't that good. And I thought to myself, my God, if she goes dairy-free and meat-free, what's going to happen to her nutrients? And we know from surveys that young girls particularly have low levels of calcium and iodine. And these two minerals, nutrients, are found in dairy foods. So I thought to myself, goodness, her bones are going to go thinner and weaker, and she's probably going to lose a lot of weight. And how will she cope with her energy levels, etc.? So I must admit, I went into a bit of a research frenzy because what I decided was I had to support her. You know what kids are like, they're going to do it anyway. So I felt at least I could give her the tools and equip her so that she would be able to navigate this vegan or plant-based diet, having the knowledge that helps her to eat this wide range of nutrients. And as I started to research, I couldn't believe what I learned. I learned so much about the benefits of plant-based eating, about the value in terms of your long-term health, sustainability, the environment, but also that if you have a well-designed plant-based diet, you needn't fall short of those important nutrients. I knew that there were nutrients such as vitamin B12 and zinc and calcium, as I said, iron perhaps, that might be lacking. But what I learned is that there are creative ways to make sure you can get all of that. Plan your diet well, have a delicious cuisine, and yet be plant-based and still be healthy. So when I started to research, I thought, okay, let me talk to lots of young people who are doing this. And what I discovered was that actually they were all either eating soups and salads for lunch, which were great in terms of vegetables, but very little protein, or they were eating takeaway and fast foods that had this vegan label. And you must have seen them in supermarkets yourself. Vegan does not necessarily mean healthy. So they were eating these foods which may not necessarily be good for them. And so I quickly realized that so many of our young people in the community are dabbling with these sorts of ways of eating and may not be getting all the nutrients they need. So what started out as a mum wanting to do the best for her daughter with the skills that I had and I could develop turned into a huge project, a bit of research, and it culminated in this book called Vegan Savvy, which I actually wrote for Shazia, my daughter. But interestingly, it's been thankfully so well received by young people around the world, actually by anyone who wants to eat more plant-based foods, not just vegans, and also by professionals, because I've been very lucky that it's been endorsed by the British Dietetic Association and the Vegan Society in the UK. So what I'd like to share with you is my learnings through this years and years of research and this culmination in this book. And it's not really about, this is what the book's about, but what I want to share with you is some of the insights in there so that if you want to try eating more plant-based foods, or if someone in your family or in your circle wants to have a vegan diet, then you can be more equipped to support and advise them. So here's what I'd like to talk about. I'm going to share my screen. If I can do it.
You will.
Right.
Okay.
Lovely. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so this is a practical guide based on my learning. And what I'd like to talk to you about is really, what are we doing here? What's so important about plant-based eating? Then the fact that you do not need to become vegan to embrace all the goodness in plant-based foods. I think someone's still got their microphone on. If you wouldn't mind just switching to mute, I'd really appreciate it. Then ensuring that you are eating a well-balanced diet if you do choose to eat a vegan or a plant-based diet, and then simple ways that you can incorporate more plant-based foods into a mixed diet. So why are we talking about this in the first place? Well, I wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the evidence, some of the research out there. So we know, certainly in the UK, that over 56% of South Asian adults are overweight or obese. And we know that this is something we must tackle, particularly when you think of COVID-19 and the fact that if you are overweight, you are more at risk of coronavirus. Well, there you are. It increases your risks of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, and as I've said, COVID-19. If Nurbanu, please could mute her computer, that would be lovely. Thank you so much. We also know that all these obesity-related conditions, if you have COVID-19, unfortunately, if you are obese, it will worsen the effect of COVID-19. And nearly 7 out of 10 South Asians in a survey by Public Health England are motivated to make lifestyle changes due to coronavirus. So this is a good time for us to be thinking about what are the practical things we can do so that we are healthier. Now, there is this huge, there was a huge meeting of global scientists around what would be the best type of diet for us to eat as a planet so that we would be healthy and also this would be environmentally friendly and sustainable. And the overwhelming conclusion showed that we needed to reduce our intake of meat and increase our intake of plant-based foods. So what I'd like to do is to think about best practice. How often have we heard this? And to learn from the best research so that we can put it into practice. And that's what I'd like to share with you. In a nutshell, we know that eating more plant-based foods will give you more fiber. Fiber helps to fill you up and it's good for your gut. Examples are whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, fruits and vegetables. We also know that if you eat more of these foods, then you have a reduced risk of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, or cardiometabolic disorders. And that's because in the research, people who eat plant-rich diets have been shown to have better weight management, lower risks of type 2 diabetes, lower risks of strokes, heart disease, bowel cancer, and some other cancers. Also, plant foods are highly powerful plant chemicals, and these are anti-inflammatory. So inflammatory conditions such as heart disease, such as arthritis, perhaps can be lessened if we cut down on red meat and processed meats and have more plants. We also know that there is no cholesterol in plant-based foods. And diets that are low in unhealthy saturated fats have been shown to help lower your blood cholesterol. Now, plant-based foods generally are low in saturated fats. So actually, this is a great diet to help you lower your cholesterol. The only one you need to be cautious of is coconut oil. And I can answer questions on that later if that's something you're interested in. So if you look at all of this, you could say that people who eat a plant-rich diet have an improved quality of life, because if you look at Mediterranean studies, this is associated with a longer life expectancy. And as I've shown you, less risk of certain diseases. So there is a lot of benefit to eating more plant-based foods. Does that mean we should all become vegan? No, unless you want to, of course. There is no need for us to become vegan. In fact, there are some misconceptions of the vegan diet. A lot of people think vegan diet is a healthy diet. Not necessarily. A vegan diet is a sustainable diet. Not necessarily. It all depends on what you're eating. If you're choosing a lot of fast foods and processed foods, and if you're not eating a diet of whole foods, such as those beans and lentils and whole grains and fruits and vegetables, it will certainly not be healthy or sustainable. The other thing that I found in my research is that there are a lot of challenges. I also did an 8-week trial on, completely plant-based eating so that I could fully immerse myself in this and therefore write Vegan Savvy, the book. And what I noticed is you need a lot of time to cook these foods. Now, in our community, we're quite used to making dar and jokka. So, for us to soak lentils overnight and then pressure cook them and then make a delicious dal maybe isn't so difficult. But for the younger people who have not been exposed to that, or for the wider community, you need a bit of skill to be eating those lentils. So I would, I think it's important to think of shortcuts to help people to embrace this way of eating. You also do need cooking skills if you're going to be making these foods. But actually, there are so many great recipe books out there. And the colors of plant-based foods and the fact that Instagram and photography is so current makes this an even more exciting type of diet to go to. Planning, it does need planning. I found that myself. I was spending a lot of time over the weekend planning my meals, planning my shopping for the week, because I'm a busy professional with my own business and I have 2 kids. So I really did need to spend that time so that I wouldn't be spending all the time in the kitchen soaking and chopping vegetables. And you do need a certain amount of knowledge. In my research, I found that very few people really understood how to get all the nutrients they needed when they moved from a predominantly meat-based diet to a plant-based diet. What I also found is that many vegans used a lot of trendy and very exciting contemporary sounding products or vegan recipes, and they would assume these are healthy. So some examples are maple syrup, coconut fat, agave nectar, pink Himalayan salt. There is nothing healthier about these ingredients. Maple syrup, agave nectar, they are still just sugar. Coconut fat, rich in saturated fats. Pink Himalayan salt, just as bad for you as ordinary table salt. You go to a store, a coffee shop, you buy a vegan chocolate brownie, it is still a chocolate brownie. It's still going to have the fat, the calories that you would get in an ordinary brownie. So what I'd like to move on to is, so if there are these misconceptions, but yet we know that it's so much better for all of us to have a plant-rich diet, how can we do this? You may be familiar with guides in your countries of the best way that we should eat. In the UK, excuse me, we have the Eat Well Guide from Public Health England, and our Vegan Society produces a vegan Eat Well Guide. Now, in my experience with patients, I haven't seen great interest in this. I think some people find it looks too complex. And when we look at the data, it's not showing that the UK community, the UK population is necessarily keeping to this way of eating. So what I did is I looked around the world for different and maybe simpler ways that I could help people to eat better. In Australia, the Glycemic Index Foundation, I've specialized in diabetes, so I'm very interested in glycemic index. And this simple plate just says half your plate with vegetables, quarter with what we call low GI carbohydrates, such as brown rice or brown pasta, quarter with protein, and you're done. In Oregon, there's a heart healthy plate, very similar. University of Massachusetts Medical School, very similar method for diabetes. In Canada, I was really proud of this one. The National Food Guide published in 2019, for me, is the simplest from the globe. It really is simple, and it is based on this concept of splitting your plate and making water the drink of choice. And there's a vegan plate in Baltimore, very similar. And actually, I've been using something similar since 2014. In my GI plan books, which are aimed at helping people lose weight and for diabetes, I use this veggie protein carbs plate, and I called it the Picture Your Plate model. And I found people really find it very easy and certainly embrace it. So for Vegan Savvy, I decided that I wanted to make it even simpler, and I just called it VVPC, veggies, protein, and carbs. And I've actually got on my website, if you look at the fridge there, somebody's downloaded this graphic from my website and put it on their fridge to remind them. And you can do that from asminanutrition.com. And I've actually got the plate here that I use, which I take into clinic. And I just suggest to people on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you will see this plate. And I suggest to people, imagine you have a set of chopsticks and put those chopsticks across each other, across your plate. So you've now divided your plate into 4 quarters. The top 2 are veggie. This is where all your vegetables, your salad, your after dinner fruit visually would appear in your imagination. Then there's 1 quarter, which is your protein. And that would be your chicken or meat or fish or eggs or beans or tofu. And another quarter is your carbs. And ideally, you should be having whole grain carbs, such as brown basmati rice, brown coarse atta for your roti, and brown pasta, whole grain breads, whole grain cereals. And this has been so widely received that I even get people on Instagram and on Twitter sending me pictures of their plates while they're out eating, because they find that they can just look at the menu and think about these 4 quarters and make sure that they're balanced. However, for me, it wasn't enough, because when you think about plant-based eating and 100% plant-based eating, there are certain nutrients that may be of concern. These are vitamin B12, vitamin D, iodine, calcium, zinc, omega-3, and selenium. And a lot of this would be met by dairy products, fish, and meat, but obviously in a fully plant-based diet, you're not going to get that. So I needed to find a way to, if you like, bridge this nutrient gap. So I looked at which are the foods in a vegan diet that could provide these nutrients, and what would be a sensible portion size so that when someone was to eat them, it would be significant in terms of their daily diet. And it had to be 15% of what we call RNI, or reference nutrient intake, ideally, obviously not always possible. And the nutrient bridge, in practice, I wanted to make it fun. So, you know, scatter on some seeds onto your salad, or, you know, make sure you just add a tablespoon of culinary yeast, and it just gives you a delicious umami flavor and gives you your vitamin B12. So I wanted to make this exciting, and I thought the concept of a nutrient bridge might be the best way to do that. So here are some examples that I'd like to give you of these nutrient bridges. If, for example, you're eating salad or sandwiches or I think we've got someone with their microphone on. Someone called Badur, please. If you wouldn't mind putting yourself to mute, that would be great. Thank you so much. Then to that salad, if you're making a dressing, use rapeseed oil, because rapeseed oil is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It's got 10 times the omega-3 of olive oil. If you're having a salad or sandwiches or pasta, putting a few walnut halves or chia seeds on, again, will provide you with plant-based omega-3 fats. If you're going to have your breakfast cereal and you think, I don't want to have dairy, so I'm going to have a plant-based drink, choose one that is fortified with iodine. Look on the label, and that way you get added iodine. If you're having a curry or soup or stew, take a tablespoon of fortified nutritional yeast, or use some miso paste. Don't add salt if you're using miso paste, because it's very salty and we want to cut down on our sodium. But if you use either of those, your soup or your curry or your stew will now have added zinc. And this is the concept of the nutrient bridge that I've originated for Vegan Savvy book. And I've been very blessed because there's been amazing feedback on how people feel more secure that they're getting the nutrients they need. And all these pictures and infographics are obviously much easier than reading a lot of text in a book. I did want to say a little bit about iron, and I don't want to get too technical for this audience, but within plant-based foods such as legumes and grains, we have a chemical substance called phytate. And what phytates do is they inhibit the absorption of iron. And iron from vegan and vegetarian foods, therefore, becomes less well absorbed than iron from meat. When you look at the research and you analyze the diets of people on a vegan diet, it's not that they're not getting enough iron. Vegetarians, you analyze their meals, there is iron there. The problem is that this phytate within those foods that are predominantly part of a vegetarian or a vegan diet will interact, will bind with the iron, so your body cannot make as much use of it. And in the book, we've got this infographic. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to complicate things, but in simple terms, if you were to choose a whole wheat breakfast cereal of choice, you're going to get some phytate and you're going to get some iron. And some of that phytate, like a jigsaw, will latch onto some of the iron. And you end up with about half of the iron only being absorbed and being useful to the body and being absorbed into the bloodstream. So it's really important to make sure that you think of ways to get enough iron because of this. And this is how you can do it. Have a source of vitamin C with your meals, because vitamin C has been shown to enhance the absorption of iron. So here are some examples. You could drink a small glass of fruit juice with your meal, or you could have a side salad. You could have some green peppers, vitamin C rich veg, adding them to dishes, or you could finish your meal with fruits such as kiwi. That way you're adding vitamin C and enhancing the absorption of the iron, because vitamin C reduces the effect of those chemicals called phytates. The other thing I think is really important, especially for our communities, is to avoid drinking tea with meals. And I know a lot of our South Asians will drink tea with their food. Now, if you're having a vegetarian meal, bindanu sak ne rotli or dar and chokha, please have water or have nothing or have some juice, but avoid drinking tea with your meals, because tea will inhibit the absorption of the iron. So you're getting a double effect there. And if you are on a fully plant-based diet and you think, God, I can't do all those things about those nutrient bridges, here are the supplements that can be particularly valuable. Vitamin D, vitamin B12, iodine, plant-based omega-3, and selenium. And one of the guides within Vegan Savvy book that has had masses of good feedback and took me a long time to write is what I call the Master Nutrient and Shopping Guide. And I've noticed people take a photograph of this and then they take it to the supermarket, because at a glance you can see, oh, okay, I'm going to be having some red kidney beans today. What am I getting from my kidney beans? Okay, there's protein and there's fiber and there's a pea there. So that's my quarter of my plate. The pea can be filled with that if I wanted to. But those kidney beans have also got iron, and there's some B vitamins, and there's zinc, and there's choline. So this is a good way for you to just have a checklist, if you like, as to making sure you're getting your micronutrients and getting a good balance of foods from your vegan diet, or even when you're choosing plant-based foods, when you're on a flexitarian diet. So let's look at our cuisine and how can we very simply eat more plant-based foods. I just want to recap on those benefits. I'm really trying to encourage you all to cut down on meat and think about eating more plants. And remember, it's related to a trimmer waistline. People who eat more fruits and vegetables report they're feeling energized. You get B vitamins that do reduce are contributing to a reduction in tiredness and fatigue. Vitamin C does the same. You can support your immunity because of those, again, vitamin C, etc. Boost your mood. there's a lot of evidence around gut health and how if you keep your gut bacteria, those microbes that live within your digestive system, if you keep them healthy and happy and well fed, then this is related to your mental well-being. And we also know that B vitamins are good for nervous energy. And in the end, we can all help save the planet if we cut down on those red meats, processed foods, etc. So let's think about how we might do this. Beans and lentils make meat dishes go further. So for example, you could add kidney beans to keema dishes, mince meat, etc., or mix some frozen spinach with chicken or meat curry. You could throw a handful of red lentils or split mung dal into curries, rice dishes, soups and stews. And remember to fill your plate with salad and vegetables first. I wish, when we went to weddings or buffets, we took our plate and the first things on that buffet table were the salad and the raita and some whole grain roti or brown basmati, and then the other foods, because that way we would make sure there's enough room for the salads and the vegetables. And as I said, the VVPC plate, I've been using it for several years. And I used it in this book I did with Sanjeev Kapoor. You may know him from ZTV with his Khana Khazana. We wrote a book together called Healthy Indian Cooking for Diabetes. And if you look at this plate, this is how we found people were eating. Around half of the plate was filled with that meat or chicken. And then around half of the plate was some rotlis and some rice. Can't see much vegetable there. So what we did was we tried to move people to this type of plate where you've got your chicken curry, you've got your rice and you've got your roti, but you've also got a quarter of the plate filled with pinda or any other veg you could choose, and a quarter of the plate with salad. And what we've done there is you're still eating the same basic food, still is delicious. I'll tell you, it was more delicious, but you've cut down that meat, you've cut down the carbs, and you've had a variety of plant-based foods. So if you were to add plants to carbs within our diet, if you have a breakfast cereal, think about, could I add some walnuts or some flax seeds to give me omega-3 fats? Maybe I could chop some Brazil nuts in there for selenium, or add some almonds for calcium. Or if I don't like those things, how about slicing a banana and bringing myself some potassium, which helps to regulate my blood pressure? What if you're making a paratha? I hope not too often, and I hope they're shallow fried, but instead of just potato, could you have vegetables in there too? If you're having shawarma wraps, then even if you've bought them from outside, you could even open them up and add extra strips of pepper, onions, cucumber, parsley. Dokra, I know you have a recipe demonstration today on dokra, great food because it's steamed. And what you could do to enhance that is to serve it with salad or a courgette raita, so you're getting some extra vegetables, or a carrot pickle. That way you're getting that diversity of plant foods. If you're eating a jacket potato, could I add some baked beans? How about some sweet corn? How about some coleslaw? Maybe I could make it myself with red cabbage and carrots and spring onion and add some low-fat mayonnaise to that. Or some stir-fried vegetables would be nice. What if you're making butter danasak, one of my favorites, potato curry? Rather than just potatoes, how about we add some peas or aubergine or cauliflower? And those peas will give protein, and all three will bring you some fiber. If you're making pasta, could you add some broccoli to the cooking water? And if you do that, the broccoli disintegrates so much that it looks a bit like a pesto. Mix it with some low-fat soft cheese and milk, and it does look like pesto pasta. And I would suggest you can even add some sweet corn or other vegetables to that. Just open a can and throw it in. If you're making a pilau, pigeon peas are delicious. And I think we call them parazi. And just adding those to even a meat pilau will make sure that you're putting those plants in. Or just throw in some canned sweet corn into plain rice. That way you're enhancing it. And if you can try brown basmati, it is so much better for you because it is a whole grain. What about adding plant proteins? Well, if you're making kukupaka or a Thai green curry, You could add some peas, you could add, that would add some plant-based protein. Mushrooms and aubergines are plant-based foods. Or if you want to give even more protein, put some peanut butter in there instead of having a lot of coconut, because that way you're getting fiber, you're getting healthy fats rather than the saturated fats from the coconut. And I often have tahini paste, which you use in hummus, in my fridge, because it's quite rich in calcium because it's made from sesame seeds. So using that to thicken curries and other dishes is a great way to get calcium. If you're having yogurt, don't have it plain, try adding some courgettes or zucchini for fiber and for crunch. Add some pomegranate seeds for color, some sliced almonds or chia seeds for extra protein. Bought some hummus? Why don't you try adding some diced pepper as a nutrient bridge, or some chopped peanuts or pine nuts that will give you protein. If you're having a veg stir fry, then cashews, peanuts, tofu, and mycoprotein, which is sold as corn, are very useful additions to add protein if you're only going to have something like veg stir fry and noodles. If you have a veg curry, try adding some peas or chana or beans or lentils or sweet corn. Having a salad, try some toasted sunflower seeds. They'll give you essential fats and fiber. Now, if you do have your takeaways, hopefully on occasions, let's think of how we can enhance those. So if you're having a burger and chips, try and have a side salad with it. If you've ordered fish and chips, you could microwave some frozen peas. If you've ordered a Chinese stir fry, maybe you could add some cashew nuts to a vegetable chow mein, or some extra green beans to chicken stir fry, or spinach to shredded beef. And if you want to have a vegan choice, don't just go for stir-fried vegetables. Make sure there's some tofu or tempeh to give you that protein. If you've ordered a balti, then add some canned chickpeas or serve it with a chickpea salad. Ready meals, sometimes we do need to buy a ready meal. We just don't have the time to cook. Well, make it better for you by adding a side salad or some extra vegetables. Bought sandwiches, try to choose a filling if you're going for a vegan one that also gives you protein. So peanut butter, hummus, falafel, sweet corn, beans, lentil pate, or meat substitutes that give you a source of protein. And if you're having canned soups, then you could add some sweet corn or kidney beans or put some seeds on top. So how do we put all this together? Well, what I hope I have shown you is that we need to take we need to be using best practices. And how we do that is to look at the research and take everything from those studies that we can relate to our own cuisine and that are relevant and appropriate to our own diets. We know that plant-based diets are linked to better health. And you don't need to go vegan to get the benefits. This is simply about adding more beans, lentils, and all these plant-based fruits and vegetables and other foods into your diet and cutting down on meat. And if we do this, the research is suggesting that this will improve your health and your overall quality of life. And if you do want to read more, there are resources at the British Dietetic Association, Heart UK, the Vegan Society, and on my own website, Asmina Nutrition, where you can find lots of information on all these nutrients and how to make sure you're eating a well-balanced diet. So I hope that's been of use. I'm going to now try to stop sharing my screen and to give you all a chance to ask questions, but I hope that what that's done for you is that that's given you an insight into the fact that, number one, you don't need to change to a vegan diet to embrace plant-based eating and to be healthier. And number two, it is possible for you to get all those wonderful nutrients from a plant-based diet by just thinking about those nutrient bridges I shared with you. And number three, this is a great time for us as a community to embrace these wonderful, colorful plant-based foods that are available to us and actually are not unusual for our own cuisine. The dals and the beans and the lentils are part of our traditional cuisine. So let's have more of those and slowly wean ourselves off and enjoy meat and enjoy our biryani, but maybe think about a smaller portion of that biryani, having that courgette raita or a cucumber raita, having lots of salad, maybe using brown whole grain rice in your biryani and adding some vegetables to it. So I wish you happy eating and thank you so much for inviting me today.